first saw Meenoo speak in 2013 at a wonderful conference up in Boston. It was tagged on to the end of National Councils of Teachers of English. And I think it was one of Meenoo's first keynotes. And just the energy and the passion, but the absolute love for the profession came through. And so I've bumped into Meenoo many times at Camp Philly, following her career and seeing what she's been up to now, moving from a teacher, educator role to now working with the Gates Foundation as a fellow. And I don't need to say much more than that because your passion is so inspiring, and I am so glad you all stayed here to hear from my wonderful friend Meenoo talk today.
I gotta do both. So thank you so much, Kate. Good to see you again. This is like coming home for me after teaching my students for over 10 years in the school district of Philadelphia. And when Barry emails you and he says, do you want to come be the person between raffle prizes after lunch and before door prizes? You say yes. And you show up. So thank you, Kate, for that introduction. Can we just give a round of applause to the entire planning team? Having done a few of these, I know how much work it takes to put one of these things on. So humbled and honored to be here. Thank you for staying, not just for the baskets, but maybe some learning together. You can find me on Twitter at Meenoo Rami. If something I say to you this afternoon resonates with you, I'd love to follow the conversation on Twitter afterwards. If something I say doesn't sit well with you, maybe you can push my thinking. So I'd love you to tweet along with me. I'm going to start where it makes most sense for me. I'm going to start with my kids. I think this is why we all show up to do the work that we do. Up on top, you'll see 20 kids that I advise throughout their entire high school career at the Science Leadership Academy. At our school, advising students or caring for students and not just caring about students is built into our advisory system, where one teacher is in charge of or takes care of about 20 kids from the first day of 9th grade till the day they graduate high school and beyond. Funny thing is, when my kids have graduated and now they're in college or they're at a 2-year university or in service, and they're my Facebook friends, which is always a little weird when the first time they ever post that like mixed drink recipe. Has that ever happened to you where you're like, oh my God, that's my baby? Like they're posting like a mixed drink, like a drunken bartender post from them. There's nothing scarier than that. But a few of my friends are my Facebook friends, and they saw me like check in at the airport saying, I'm coming to New Jersey, and they all started Facebook messaging me and saying like, can we see you? Are you gonna be in Philly? I'm like, I'm staying in Jersey, but I'm coming back in November, maybe we can get together. So I say that to add that the relationship with these 20 kids for me will never end. And when I look at the bottom picture, them standing on the steps of Franklin Institute in their graduation robes, I'm so proud. It's a little bittersweet to see them up there. And that's not the entire graduating class, by the way. It's just the kids who showed up on time for the picture. Something that is on back of my mind, aside from immense pride and the hard work we did together to get them from 9th grade to 12th grade, is the idea that, we can all feel really good about the work that we do every day, but the world that we're sending our kids off to, whether it's college or work or service, is a complex place. And have we done everything we could do to prepare them? So if that has ever nagged at you, that question, or if that question has ever kept you up at night, maybe some of what I will say this afternoon will resonate with you. So when you think about things like PARC and standardized curriculum and assessment, and you're supposed to be giving kids choice and voice, and how do you incorporate technology in meaningful ways, needless to say our work is complex. And I think the way I describe the job of a teacher is manager of complexity, and maybe that will resonate with you. If you think about it, in the moment of teaching, you're trying to read 33 different people, what they're going through, what are they getting out of your lesson, are you connecting with any one of them, what is their thinking about the work they're trying to do. So needless to say that our work is complex, but whenever I'm in a room like this surrounded by other teachers, I'm a little less worried, because when we sit around a table, when we solve problems together, when I see that back wall filled with problems of practice and people coming together and talking about how to make them better and how to solve those problems together, I'm a little relieved. And I hope that's some of what you've experienced at the CISA. Are there any science teachers in the room? Shout out to science teachers. Shout out. You're gonna forgive me for next few minutes, because as an English teacher, I'm gonna talk about science, and that's always scary, but you'll go with me for a second. I put this little slide of a coral reef up here for a reason. So I wanna take the idea of Darwin's paradox and sort of apply it to our work as teachers and educators. So Darwin, 27 years old, 27,000 miles away from London, is standing on Keeling Islands. And he looks down and he sees on land there's little to no biodiversity. There's nothing growing under his feet. There's nothing interesting to examine. But just few feet away, near the edge of water, he sees this. He sees immense biodiversity. He sees life growing, flourishing, changing. And because he's Darwin, he says, why? Why is that? And that has been deemed the Darwin's paradox, which we've all heard of. And I want to sort of apply this example to our practice. When I think about Darwin's paradox, it also applies to the paradox of our classroom. You go into certain classrooms and you see where learning is alive, it's thriving, it's changing, it's challenging, it's moving, it's flourishing. And you go into other classrooms and maybe there isn't that much of that happening. And why is that? Are there certain conditions in our own minds, in our own work, in the way that, and a lot of speakers at this conference and others have come and said this before me, and perhaps in much better ways, things such as the way you design your classroom, the way you design your curriculum, the way you deliver learning, the way you shape learning experiences for kids. I think the question that we need to ask ourselves at all times is, am I helping my students be more creative, collaborative? Am I helping them to think in new and different ways? Or am I intentionally or unintentionally actually keeping that learning, that type of learning, from flourishing in my own classroom? So a couple of ways to think about this work. Perhaps we can draw inspiration from some companies around us, companies that we all use and love. I take inspiration for my work from other places, like Darwin, for example, and perhaps some of works of these companies. Are you familiar with some of these brands up there? Which one, ma'am, are you familiar with?
Fitbit.
How do you use Fitbit?
To track my steps.
You track your steps, and do you compete with other people?
Yes, I join challenges.
Nice. Any other companies you see up there that you connect with? Yes, ma'am, you're nodding yes.
Uber,
Uber, how do you use Uber?
Uber cabs for transportation.
So instead of taking a smelly cab, you can take Uber. Awesome. Lower costs, okay, I like that. Yes, sir, which company do you identify with?
Spotify.
Spotify, how do you use it?
To listen to music without commercials while driving.
Awesome. That's if you pay for it. If you don't pay for it, you get the commercial.
I use Airbnb quite often to travel.
Okay, so instead of a hotel, you can stay in someone's house or a room in their house, meet a local, get some tips somewhere to grab dinner. It's probably what I should have done last night. No, the hotel was nice, thank you. But when we think of disruption in education, it's seen as negative. Don't disrupt me, or you're disturbing our learning. Disruption in innovation are people who take ideas that already exist and they flip them upside down or sideways. They change the conversation about how we should get around, how we should listen to music, or how we should create a shared economy around renting space to one another. And the question that I want to pose to you is, what do you think is the disruption in education that's coming up? What do you think it might be? What is going to change the way we talk about teaching and learning in the next few years or few decades? What do you think it might be? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Ma'am, you said?
I think grades.
Grades, okay.
Grades go away and on standard-based or mastery.
Awesome. And we could say the iPhone I left behind on that table, or the phone in front of you, or the device you're typing on or tweeting from, or the network you're connected to. But I'm gonna, and this is not trying to be cute, I really believe this, I think it's you. I think it's us. I think technology will come and go, companies will come and go, devices will come and go, but what we do to each other, how we define what it means to be a teacher and a learner, I think will change the game. I think it's people who show up and stay for the closing keynote change the game. So I want to think about the power of networks for a second. If you, like Kate, have followed my career, I've been crazy about networks since, it was like my 4th year teaching in the classroom, and I felt disconnected and felt like I didn't have anyone to learn from. So I started a Twitter hashtag for English teachers, and now people don't even know that it was one teacher who started that, but that has connected thousands of teachers across the country and the world. So I'm crazy about networks and power of networks and learning in a community. If you say, what are some things you geek out about? Those are the things I geek out about. Up here, I'm not gonna play a guessing game with you, is my LinkedIn network mapped out, which is weird. Every single dot up there is someone I know and have connected intentionally in my LinkedIn network. As you can see, the blue blob is probably some of you. It's educators. Not only are they connected to me, but they're connected to each other. I always wonder about this little dot way out here. I don't know who that person is, but I kind of feel bad. Maybe we should get them connected. But that's probably someone I know from like high school or something. But the idea is, when you learn in a community, you transform the way you share resources, you exchange ideas, and you share your expertise with one another. And I'm kind of nuts about this idea. And if you continue to follow my work in the future years, I'm still playing with this idea of what does it mean to be a learner in a community? what responsibilities do we have to one another. And for me, the idea of teachers pay teachers is quite degrading, because it takes the idea of a community and makes it a market, right? And it hurts me in a lot of ways. And when people solve a problem and they freely share that solution with other people, they open a door not just for that teacher, but the students that are served by that teacher. So if we are really crazy about transforming education and outcomes for all kids, we have to get connected and we have to share ideas. Because the problem that you've already solved, I'm probably still struggling with. And I don't need to unnecessarily struggle. Teaching is hard enough. We don't have to do it alone. Sorry, I'm not using a clicker, so I'm going back and forth. In my small time as a teacher, I've seen some very important transformations in my beloved profession. My first year of teaching, at the end of the day, I'd be really tired, too tired to even drive home. And I would wander into another classroom just to talk to another adult, because I would not have talked to another adult all day long. And when I would get to that teacher's door, first of all, they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" And God forbid, if I got near their cabinet of tests and worksheets, forget about it. They'd lunge at me to make sure that cabinet was locked, because they had spent 20 years, creating those materials, and me, some newbie, coming into their classroom to just take their stuff wasn't gonna fly. And in my short span of about 10 years, from 2004 to present, I've seen these shifts happen, and you've seen these shifts happen, where we've gone from hoarding things to sharing them. Now, if someone takes your idea and shares it, it's a badge of pride, right? You're happy that someone took your idea and made it their own. We've gone from being competitive to being collaborative. We've seen things go from being standardized to being personalized. The weirdest example of this for me is my Amazon recommendation list, like what I should buy next. That algorithm knows me better than my family. If that algorithm made my Christmas list, I would get all the right things. And we've gone from being isolated, closing our door, protecting our resources, guarding our practice, to coming to spaces like this and coming to places like Twitter and openly sharing not only what works, but what doesn't work for us. And in that power of vulnerability, in that power of sharing, little by little, inch by inch, I think we're changing our profession. But my call to action for you after today will be, who's gonna sit in your seat next year? Who's gonna come in? Who are you gonna bring along on your teacher leadership journey? Because if you just keep, checking boxes or climbing ladders or getting that next thing on your achievement list that you wanna connect, but you don't bring anyone else along with you, you don't help anyone else, I think it defeats the purpose of this connected world that we're living in. So my question to you is, who's gonna sit in your seat next year and why? And how are you gonna increase the number of people that are touched by your work? I think this is not just important for us, but for our students. I think it was another speaker, where we said we'd have dueling slides. This is also from the World Economic Forum. The top 10 skills just from 2015 to 2020, which is only 4 years away. So think of your 9th graders right now. By the time they graduate, these are the top skills that employers are looking for. a kid that's born today, what kind of work will they be doing in 2035? 65% of careers that our students have or will have not been invented yet. So if that's true, check out what we were focused on in 2015. Complex problem solving, people management, but look at creativity. It's at the bottom of the list. Look at creativity jumping to number 3 in 2020. So we don't need some World Economic Forum to tell us this. We already do this. But how do we communicate? My biggest takeaway from this conference is we're all having the right conversation. How do we get more teachers in? And then how do we open this conversation up with parents? Because if they are stuck on grades, if they are stuck on rankings, if they're stuck on the world that no longer exists, their own children are not going to be served by that thinking. So how do we open this conversation up with parents? That's my biggest takeaway, and the question that I'll still be thinking about when I leave from here. So I think this matters because this didn't come up the right way. But if our world is shifting, then the way we reach kids has to shift. If that's true, the way we do our work has to shift. And I think this is important because nothing happens until somebody feels something. I think we ignore this so much. On the first day back from school this year, your back to school meeting was like, let's look at the scores that came out over summer. Math is down by 2%, reading is up by half a point. No one talks about how you feel or what drives you or what you're passionate about. You actually have to leave your school and come to places like this to find that drive and passion again. And it shouldn't have to be that way. To the principals, to the school system leaders, if you want change in practice in your teachers, you have to give them not just the data, but a story, a compelling reason why. If you do that, you'll start to change the culture and the conversation in your school. So for me, all of this has always been about kids. It's not been about my career trajectory or what am I going to do next. For me, what drives my work is always about kids like Marlon. So I met Marlon, who is now a sophomore at Wesleyan University. Marlon was writing a 2-page paper on a topic of her choice, which happened to be teen brains and sleep. And Marlon was doing some research, but came across a paywall that blocked her from getting to her article that she wanted to access. And me, being her annoying teacher that I am, I said, hey, this professor is actually from University of Pennsylvania, 10 blocks from our school. Why don't you email the professor and see if you can get access to the paper that we can't buy for you? And she said, she emailed the professor, and the reply she got, based on that, she wrote, the professor emailed me back and sent me his paper and said that he'd be happy to answer any questions I have to incorporate into my paper. And you might see this as like, so what, it's just a little anecdote, but I think we have to model this kind of learning for our kids. When they come across a hurdle, we have to find ways to teach them, how do you overcome hurdles? How do you solve your own problems? We have to make learning relevant. I don't think Marlon emailed that professor because she loved me so much or cared about what I had to tell her. I think she really wanted to find out the connection between teens' sleep and their brains and how they function, and that's why she did the work that she did. I think we have to find real audience for our students' work. If our students are only getting a grade that based on the work that you only see, that's not enough. How are you going public with your work, and how are you spotlighting the not only the product, but the process of learning that's happening in your classroom? And lastly, like I said, I'm not going to be standing over Marlon in college when she takes her classes. I'll be accessible by social media and email, but I won't be physically in the room with her. How will she continue to power her own learning? And that's what I'm crazy about. In some ways, how do we make ourselves obsolete? If we really do our job, our kids should be able to walk out of our high schools and be like, okay, world's gonna change, but I know what I need to do. I know what I'm passionate about. I know how I like to solve problems. I know how to contribute in the world. If we can do that, I think we'll be all right. I wanna think about motivation for a second, because I think we see motivation as something inherent, that argument versus fixed mindset versus growth mindset. I think the same thing goes for motivation. We see it as something inherent in our kids, right? The first day they walk into the classroom, how they carry themselves, the first assignment they turn in, we start to create a story about a kid in our classroom. Well, capable, but doesn't put a lot of effort in. Will struggle a lot more work for me. Intentionally or unintentionally, we create these stories about our kids. But what we choose, maybe not choose, but perhaps what we don't realize is that the prerequisite to motivation is that belief that we have control over our actions and surroundings. We have to feel like we're in control in order to feel motivated. Let me say that one more time. In order for us to feel motivated, we have to feel like we're in control of our situation. So if your kids are not driving the learning in your classroom, they feel powerless. And what happens to you when you feel powerless? You shut down. You don't put as much effort in. Your motivation is low. Remember back to that Darwin example? What kind of situations and conditions create life and living and learning versus what kinds of things that take away from it. The world that I want to live in is a world where my kids are not just consuming, but they're creating, they're publishing, they're collaborating, and they're solving problems that matter. Problems like global warming, problems like what's happening in Syria, things that really affect what will be the world that they inherit. So that's the kind of world that I want to live in. It's not just playing school. It's about claiming an education versus receiving one. We need to ask our kids to do work that's worthy of their time, talent, and brilliance and intelligence. The kinds of qualities that I'm passionate about, you can't capture on a bubble sheet, right? You can never capture creativity. You can never capture someone's tenacity. You can never capture the deep thinking one does to actually create a product in your classroom. That's not going to be captured easily on a Scantron sheet. There will be lots of standards that will come and go. Download all the pages all the time, every time. That will never end. But if I could make anything standard in all of our classrooms, it would be joy, curiosity, it'd be passion, and it'd be kindness. It'd be kindness between all of us and our students. So if I can leave you with one thought, I'm going to share something with you. Hopefully the audio will work. And if I can leave you with one thought, it would be this. Or not. Hold on. Not gonna give up. Let's see if I can fix the display. Kate, you're helping.
Do what I can.
I just want to be able to play a video off YouTube.
You should be hardwired in that YouTube would work. Where do we go with this display? Because you left the slideshow.
Yeah.
Go down to here.
Control panel.
Yeah. Display. Oh, no. Connected projector is over here.
Oh, did I lose the connection?
No, it just might be in. It's an extend. Drag this over.
Should I duplicate?
Sure.
Kate,
There it is.
Kate saves the day.
No. All right. Go ahead. Make it big. Hit play. We should be good.
Hopefully.
No! Oh my God, I did not save the day. Sorry.
What's with the playback?
The awesomest thing you can. Like,
There you go. Oh, there you go. It played.
imagine the awesomest thing you can. Like an automatic grilled cheeseburger. Or a time machine. Or a time machine with an automatic grilled cheeseburger. Now imagine who's going to invent it. Him? Glasses here? Whoever they are? Or maybe her. But how do kids like these become the types of people that do things like this? Maybe we should ask this guy.
Knowledge is tiny. Sometimes it's a limit to have new ideas. That's the problem with the old schooling, because they were teaching answers. I believe questions are probably more important today than the answers.
Erno's Cube is a question waiting to be answered. And when the right person finds the right question, something amazing happens. They start seeing the world as it truly is. Not a place to be memorized, but a place to be figured out, flipped, turned, twisted, and ultimately made better, forever. Today, she may be an octopus, but help kids like her fall in love with problem solving, and they will embark on journeys to become scientists, artists, engineers, designers, inventors, or something no one's ever been before, but you can bet we're gonna need. That's why moments like this, go, and this, and this, and especially this, are so important. Because there are companies to found, planets to walk on, time machines to invent, a future to be made amazing. We may not know what it's going to look like, but we know who's going to do it.
Sorry. Play from current slide. If I can leave you with another piece to think about, every decision we make, whether we're sitting in a superintendent's chair or standing in front of our classroom, affects our kids. So let's not try to do what everyone else wants us to do, which is change everything, change all at once. I think we need to make haste slowly. We need to really be intentional and thoughtful about the decisions that we make. If it's okay with you, I'd like you to know about something that I'm working on actively right now. I'm trying to imagine what reading could look like for students at home and at school. I'm not going to say much more about that, but if you want to check out our work, our app is out on Apple and Android store right now. You can see what we're trying to do with reading and kids and putting the right book in your student's hand at the right time, whether it's your child at home or a kid at school. We're trying to make that match. So see how we're trying to do that. Come hang out with us. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're online. So come check out our work. I've never ever been certified or supported by any company, so to attach myself to a company is a really weird thing. But this is something that I've been passionate about for as many years I've spent in the classroom. So I'm really excited that we can transform. I want to change the conversation from kids can't read or don't want to read to how do we find that right book that's going to unlock a kid's love of reading for that child at that particular moment. So that's the conversation I'm trying to change. Maybe you'll want to join me on that journey and check out the work that I'm trying to do. I think, I'm a little jealous because you're all going back to the classroom tomorrow. And every single one of you tomorrow has a chance to make, every single person that walks through that door in your classroom feel like somebody. And that's a really, really incredible honor and a special thing. And so I hope you relish that tomorrow when you're high-fiving kids at your door. These are some of the places I hang out. Again, I'd love to hear from you on my work, and let me know how I can help you in yours. Thanks.